Think your tight hips are just from sitting too long? Think again. Most people stretch their hip flexors every week, sometimes every day, and still stay tight, sore, and limited. Here's the truth. It's not because your muscles are too short. It's because you've been stretching them wrong this entire time. Let me ask you this. When you drop into a lunge stretch, do you shove your hips forward, arch your lower back, and feel that big pull at the front of your thigh? You probably think, that's it. I'm really opening up the hips. But what if I told you that stretch you love might actually be making your hips tighter and your lower back weaker? Here's the kicker. That deep stretch feeling isn't always a sign you're doing it right. In fact, it can mean the exact opposite. Most people chase the sensation of a stretch, not the function of one. And that's the number one reason their hip flexors never actually loosen up. Before we fix it, let's expose what's going wrong. Watch what most people do when they stretch their hip flexors. They start in a half-kneeling position, one knee down, the other foot in front, and then they just drive their hips forward as far as possible. The chest leans back, the ribs flare up, the abs switch off, and the pelvis tilts forward like it's trying to escape the body. They feel a big pull right here at the front of the hip, and they think, perfect, that's the stretch. But in reality, what's happening is their lower back is arching, their pelvis is dumping forward, and they're stretching the wrong tissue. You're not targeting the hip flexor, you're stretching the joint capsule and straining your lumbar spine. That's like trying to loosen a rope by pulling on the wrong end. It might feel like something's happening, but you're not fixing the real problem. Now here's where things get interesting. What if I told you that the real hip flexor stretch doesn't actually come from moving more, but from stabilizing better? Think about that for a second. You don't need to push deeper. You need to create tension in the right places. That's how you unlock the muscle, not just yank on it. So here's a little test for you. Next time you're in that half-kneeling lunge, instead of shoving the hips forward, do this. Squeeze your glute on the back leg, really hard. Feel how that immediately changes the stretch? Suddenly, you don't need to move an inch, but the front of your hip lights up in a whole new way. That's not just a feeling, that's your brain finally turning on the right muscle. Most people completely skip this step. They're chasing flexibility without control. But here's the deal. Your body only lets you move into ranges it can control. So if your glutes and core aren't stabilizing your pelvis, your hip flexors will stay tight as a form of protection. It's like your body's built-in safety lock. You might be thinking, wait, so all that stretching I've been doing might be useless? Not useless, just incomplete. You've been pulling on the muscle without giving it permission to relax. And that permission comes from stability. That's the hidden key. Picture your pelvis like the foundation of a skyscraper. If that foundation is tilted or unstable, the entire structure above it can't move efficiently. The hip flexor connects directly to that foundation. So when the glute on one side and the core in front aren't doing their job, the hip flexor goes into overdrive trying to hold you together. It's not the villain, it's the overworked hero trying to keep your body from collapsing. So next time, before you even think about lunging forward, ask yourself, is my glute engaged? Is my rib cage stacked over my hips? If not, stop right there. Because no matter how deep you go, you're just feeding the wrong pattern. Now, I'm not going to show you the full correct setup yet. That's coming next. But I'll drop this hint. The secret to a truly effective hip flexor stretch isn't about distance, it's about alignment. Once you learn how to stack, engage, and breathe correctly, you'll realize you can get a far deeper and safer stretch without moving much at all. Most people think they need to stretch harder, but the pros know it's about stretching smarter. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how to make that switch and feel your hips open up like never before. All right, take a second and think. Have you been stretching your hip flexors or your lower back? Because if you've been feeling it mostly in your spine or your quad, you're about to have a complete aha moment in the next part. That's where we'll rebuild your stretch from the ground up, literally, and teach your body what true mobility feels like. You ready for that? Good, because the way you've been doing it ends today. All right, let's rebuild this from the ground up, literally, because now that you know what's wrong with the way most people stretch their hip flexors, it's time to learn the right way, and I promise. Once you feel the difference, you'll never go back to that old lunge push move again. Start by setting yourself up in the half-kneeling position, but don't rush into the stretch. One knee on the ground, the other foot planted firmly in front. Think about creating a 90-degree angle at both knees. Now pause. Before you even move, I want you to notice your posture. Are your ribs popping out? Is your lower back arched? If yes, that's your first fix. Gently tuck your pelvis under, like you're trying to zip up tight jeans. Feel that? You just took your lower back out of the equation. Now here's where the magic happens. I want you to squeeze your glute on the side of the knee that's on the ground. Really squeeze it, like you're trying to crack a walnut under your butt. Feel how the front of your hip immediately starts to lengthen? That's the real hip flexor stretch. You haven't even moved yet, but your body's already aligning properly. Next, engage your core. Imagine someone's about to give you a gentle jab to the stomach. Brace just enough to meet that pressure. Don't suck your stomach in, just tighten it naturally. Now your pelvis, core, and rib cage are stacked perfectly over one another, like building blocks. This is your foundation. Without this, everything else collapses. Now, slowly, and I mean slowly, start to shift your entire body forward an inch or two. Not your chest, not your lower back. Your whole body is one unit. Keep that glute engaged, keep that core tight. You'll feel the front of the hip open up even more. But it's a clean, deep stretch, not that sharp pull from before. You're targeting the iliopsoas, the real hip flexor, instead of dumping all that tension into your lower spine. Let me explain what's happening here in simple terms. When you tuck your pelvis and engage your glutes, you're telling your brain, hey, it's safe to relax this muscle. Because the glute is the hip flexor's opposite. When one turns on, the other naturally lets go. That's called reciprocal inhibition. It's your nervous system's built-in balance mechanism. You don't have to force flexibility, you just have to earn it. Now here's a common mistake even experienced people make. They lose tension halfway through. You'll see it all the time. The glute stops firing, the ribs start flaring, and suddenly, the stretch turns sloppy again. Don't let that happen. Keep checking in with your body, glute tight, ribs down, abs engaged, breath steady. This is how you turn a basic stretch into an active mobility drill. Speaking of breathing, this part's crucial. Deep inhale through your nose, fill your belly and ribs, then exhale slowly through your mouth. As you exhale, feel your hips sink just a little deeper, but under control. No bouncing, no forcing it. Breathing signals your nervous system to release tension. It's like telling your body, we're safe here, you can open up. Do that for 3 or 4 deep breaths, and you'll feel your hip open more naturally than any aggressive push ever could. Now, a little pro tip for you. Try tucking your toes on your back foot under, instead of letting them go flat. That little adjustment helps engage the whole kinetic chain, from your ankle to your glute, adding stability and power to the stretch. It's a small tweak with a massive payoff. And here's something to think about. If your front knee is collapsing inward or your back knee feels uncomfortable, that's your body saying you've lost alignment. Your front knee should track right over your ankle and your torso should stay tall, like there's a string pulling the crown of your head straight up toward the ceiling. Now, let's test your awareness. Relax your glute for a second. Notice how instantly your hip tightens up again? That's the difference between passive stretching and active stretching. The first one just lengthens tissue temporarily. The second one actually teaches your body to own that new range of motion. That's why this version works so much better and lasts longer. You can even make it more advanced once you've nailed the basics. While keeping everything engaged, reach your arm up on the same side as your back leg and gently lean away from that side. That's how you target the deeper hip flexor, the psoas major, which attaches to your spine. Just don't overdo it. Stay tall, breathe, and let it open naturally. Take one more deep breath here. Exhale. Feel that? That's not strain, that's release. That's your hip flexor finally doing what it's supposed to do. Move freely. Most people think mobility is about how far you can stretch. It's not. It's about how well you can control your body in the positions that matter. This isn't about looking flexible, it's about being functional. So before you hop up, let that sink in. You've just learned how to activate, align, and breathe your way into a true hip flexor stretch. The kind that improves your posture, relieves lower back tension, and boosts your athletic performance. And here's the cool part. We're not done yet. Because in the next part, we'll take this foundation and build on it, adding movement, balance, and a dynamic version of this stretch that teaches your body to use that new mobility in real life. You ready to make your hips bulletproof? Let's level it up.